Welcome to Just Say Hey, the podcast where we talk about the things that matter in small farms. You know why? Because we are a small farm. Today's kind of cool. I've got a friend of mine sitting here, Billy Bob Zurlieni. Greg's sitting here next to me. We've gotten to be friends over the past few years, and he has helped us out on our farm a lot. Not only with he's a heck of a lot smarter than I am, but he also works for the John Deere dealership that we deal with, and he deals with all of their locations. So anyway, let's have a good conversation. We'll get into it. Welcome to Just Say Hey, the podcast, where we talk about what matters to small farms, whether it's business, marketing, agronomy, equipment, livestock health. If it matters to small farms, we'll probably talk about it here. So let's get into it. All right. So, Greg, I got to ask the first question that I'm sure everybody asks you is, why Billy Bob?
Well, that is a very good question, John. Comes up all the time. Obviously, my real name is Greg Zurlieni. I always tell everybody I'm a German Polak, and then always, second. It's been probably back in like 94, 96, a movie by the name of Varsity Blues came out, and two very good friends of mine, twin brothers, I did a lot of livestock showing when I was a kid growing up, and that movie was kind of coming on, and it was pretty popular, and there was a character in there was Billy Bob, and he had hogs, and at the time I was raising hogs there at home, so it just kind of stuck, and ever since then, it's just, it's on my business card. You'll call somebody and I'll introduce myself as Greg Zurlieni with my current position and role at the outfit I work for. And I'm like, no, you ever heard of Billy Bob? Oh, yeah, that's you. Okay. So, yeah, it goes back a long time ago. Like I said, 94, 96, somewhere in there is when I got it. So, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I look at your business card, and you probably have the longest name on a business card you ever see.
Yeah. My last name, it's pretty common in this part of the world, and then it's kind of interesting as I travel to other areas of the United States. Right here in Southern Illinois, my family's originated over around Aveston and Breeze, and that German settlement in that area, and then my grandfather moved over here to Wayne County back in the early 70s, I guess. And then I was actually on the phone with a guy the other day out of North Carolina on a project I was working on, and he said, "Are you related to Tim Zurlieni?" And I said, "Wow." I said, "You must know him because you can say his last name." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I worked with him for several years when he was with Bayer. He worked for a pharmaceutical company back in the day." So yeah, there's some people that pronounce it, and then there's people that I've known my whole life that still can't pronounce it. So yeah, it's one of those deals. I guess it kind of sticks with you. But yeah, Billy Bob's just become the norm.
Yeah,
it don't bother me.
I talk to guys at I go into the local dealership here, and I'll say, yeah, Billy Bob, and all of a sudden they refer to you as, oh, it's Greg. It's Greg.
Yeah.
No, it's Billy Bob.
Yeah.
So I also sit on the Illinois Forage and Grassland Council. You're the current president of the Illinois Forage and Grassland Council. Yeah. Can you describe what they do?
So that's a good thing to bring up there too. So the Illinois Forage and Grassland Council is made up of 12 different people throughout the state, different quarters of the state as well. John, you're involved with it as much as I am here in the southern end, and Illinois is a very rare state. We're about 400 miles from one end to the other, and we're about 160 from one side to the other. And we got a lot of agriculture. We got a lot of forage production in Illinois. Obviously, Illinois is known for corn as well.
Yep.
One thing about the Forage and Grassland Council is that it brings together guys and points of view and ideas from every industry, from the education side, from the industry side, and as you on the producer side.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the interesting things about it is, that it's not only, it's not just guys who raise forage. It's not just guys who sell forage equipment. It's not just, people in the industry, in the education side. It's all of it. And that really has got to turn my phone off. My phone just rang.
Yeah. Well, I've been on mine.
We don't need to talk to those people.
Yeah.
So, but being on the producer side and getting to interface with the industry side and the education side and being able to ask questions, because, if you ask a forage grower up in Northern Illinois, their advice just isn't going to work down here. We have such a different climate from one end of the state to the other.
Absolutely. And that's a valid point that I've noticed since I've been involved with this group is as we see difficulties here in Southern Illinois with raising alfalfa and some different types of grass, and the guys up north, they don't even deal with this bug pressure that we deal with down here. I mean, we're you and I as well. I mean, we're scouting fields early on, first part of March. We're
Oh
starting
yeah.
to look for aphids. We're looking for weevils. I always tell everybody, the worst 3 days that we ever get in the growing seasons, we get 3 days of south wind.
Yeah.
And when you get 3 days of south wind in Southern Illinois, you can bet some money that there's going to be some armyworms blow in somewhere.
And you don't have to tell me about that.
Yeah.
We dealt with it. I had people calling me from all over the southern part of the state, guys from that were scouting fields for AgroLiquid, guys that were scouting fields on their own. They're alfalfa growers a little bit east of here. Call and say, hey, we've got worms. You better go check. And it's amazing if you're an alfalfa grower how fast that happens.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, when and some of the producers that I work with on the, such as yourself, on what I'd call the high-end alfalfa producers, it's money every time we make a trip across that field with a pesticide or fungicide. But in the end, when we're shooting for what we consider to be the highest quality feed we can put up, it pays long term. And I always say, everybody's like, oh, you got to look for 3. And, one guy that I deal with, he's like, well, I talked to my agronomist, and I said, well, I just asked him one day, I said, how many hay fields does your agronomist go through besides yours?
Yeah.
Well, probably nobody.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so he's scouting corn and beans. He's got that, kind of on his deal. I said, I ain't saying I'm an agronomist or anything, but I said, I can tell you what the weather's right, and just by what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And, you just got to think about nature too. Like I said, it's a highly managed crop these days, alfalfa.
It is. We learned the hard way. We put that first year in. We did a spring planting, and luckily we didn't have the aphid problem or the armyworm problem, but we had a weed problem that it almost put us under. I mean, it was that bad. We planted, what was it, almost 200 acres, and did not harvest one bale from that our first year in production.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a challenging crop. Going to refer back to the Forage and Grasslands Council, because the guys that we deal with up north, the top part of the state all the way down through the center part of the state, they've got a whole different soil structure, and a soil type, and they've got topsoil up there and down here. If you find topsoil around here, it's usually where somebody's fed hay 30 years ago. We've got a little black spot, but most of the time it's pretty red, pretty clay.
Yeah.
You get south of 64, Interstate 64, and it's just, I say that's a whole different zone of the world. And
yeah, well, not only, temperature differences, moisture differences, and then soil differences. I mean, it really is a completely different beast farming down here versus, heck, I've got a friend up in central Illinois that has an indoor arena that I swear with no sunlight could grow 250 bushels.
Yeah. One of the guys that's on the IFGC with us, he's right there out of Champaign, and I always kind of scratch my head when I leave his farm, kind of thinking, man, I mean, you just drive by here with a bag of seed corn in the back of your truck, and it's guaranteed $280 an acre, and this guy's got 800 acres of alfalfa, and I imagine his neighbors are looking at him a little bit like, what's wrong with him? But at the end of the day, forage production in the state of Illinois is key. I don't know where we rank at. We're probably about 20th overall in the nation as far as acres, because we still have a really good dairy industry up in the northwest corner. And then, as like where you're at here in Southern Illinois, I mean, we've got a large equine. That's a recreational sport, and that all those producers, and I say this all the time, as we're in every meeting and trying to promote the forage industry, is no matter what ruminant it is, it's got to have dry matter.
Yeah. We're exploring pelletization. We're exploring a lot of different opportunities. But when you get into the business side of it, and then you add the agronomic challenges we have a little bit further south here, it's a little tough. But the challenges of the challenges we face with the soil differentials, the moisture changes, the temperature. We make up a lot of that because with the equine community down here, we deal with several large stables. We also have over 400 miles of horse trails in the area. A lot of people are traveling in, but trucking. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
trucking just kills you. We donated 2 semi loads of hay and have another couple ready to go out here probably in December when they sort of get it figured out over there. Um, you know, getting trucking done it costs almost as much as the hay itself.
Yeah, the freight business it's a nightmare anymore just because, in the freight business, those guys are dealing with so much, you know, mandatory regulations on drivers, time they can work. And I'm not going to lie to you. I just talked to a truck driver this morning. I mean, you go put a set of 18 tires on a
Oh, good
18
Lord.
wheeler. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to the bank to borrow money nowadays. It ain't like we rolled in the tire shop 20 years ago and we got a flat fix for $5. No, it's like, hell, we got to have a work order and at least $125 minimum. And, all that comes into consideration and just,
Well, the electronic logbooks,
Yeah.
I talked to a driver the other day and he was saying that, he used to like to go into like places like Atlanta, roll north of Atlanta, be there 5 o'clock in the afternoon, pull off, sleep for a few hours, jump up and run through downtown Atlanta at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then get another couple hours of sleep.
Yeah.
It was safer for everybody else on the road. It was safer for him. But because of the electronic logbooking, he can't do it.
He's got to stop.
He's got to stop, and that's his day. So he's got to fight through and just sit in traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I don't know if you've been through Atlanta lately, but the last time I drove through there 2 years ago, you just plan on 2 hours, top to bottom. I don't care which side you go to. If you want to take west side bypass or the east side, sometimes just splitting it right down the middle is just as good as any.
I used to live there, and when I lived there, I remember my wife and I lived up north of the city. And when I started working for that one outfit down there, I was, it was about a 45-minute drive to work. By the time I moved on into another position with another company, that drive was over 2 hours. I mean, Atlanta during that time period from the mid 90s through the, early 2000s was growing at an exponential rate, and the road system just couldn't keep up with the growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always been horrible. My worst was I would have to plan if I had an 8 o'clock meeting, 8 o'clock in the morning. If I had an 8 o'clock meeting, I would have to plan to be leaving my house by 5:30.
Oh, yeah.
To have a safe, and it was, you know how far it was to my office?
Oh, probably 5-6 miles.
That was a little further. It was 23 miles.
Yeah.
All but about 2 miles was interstate, and I had to plan 2.5 hours.
Oh, I don't doubt one bit.
Yeah, it's horrible. People complain about tractors, getting behind a tractor during planting or harvest season, and you know what? I'll take that any day.
Yeah.
I'll take that any day over sitting 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there ain't, yeah, it's just, the world's, I mean, I think about all the time just how much it's changed in my lifetime and what it's going to be like another 10, 15 years from now.
Oh, yeah.
We think that our cell phones are outdated now and they're 2 days old,
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of Louis L'Amour.
Yeah.
I read all of it. Still to this day, if I get bored, I'll pick up a little Louis L'Amour book and read it. And I think about what it was like not all that long ago in the real scheme of things. But here we go in 100 years, go from, being able to cover 20 miles in a day. And that was a big day. I mean, 12 to 14 miles was probably much closer to the average. And here we go, we can cover, if you don't care about the police, you can cover 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And get on an airplane and you're sitting perfect and you're having your heat, your seats heated and your, the air conditioning and.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely the way things change. And even in my role now, it's like last Friday. I mean, I flew out of Syracuse, New York at 5. I mean, we took off, we boarded at 5 o'clock. I mean, we were in the air at 5:30 and stopped in Detroit. I was sitting in St. Louis at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. A lot of people probably hadn't even clocked in or went to work yet, I mean, it's just the way the world works. It's like, you wake up in time zone on the, East Coast, and next thing you know, it's 5 o'clock in the Midwest and I'm ready for bed. I've already got my 12 hours in here,
I remember doing a business trip back in this had probably been the mid 90s, early 2000s. And when I was out in San Diego, I started in Los Angeles, went up to San Francisco, back to Los Angeles for another meeting, down to San Diego, from San Diego to Miami, and then Miami up did few stops through the Midwest and all. And I remember it being so amazing to me that one night I'm sitting on the Pacific Ocean, dipping my feet in the water in the Pacific Ocean. The next morning, I'm sitting on the Atlantic Ocean, dipping my feet in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, that was one thing in my old role with another manufacturer was I've been blessed to travel a lot. And one 24-hour period, I started in Salt Lake City, Utah, at a sales training as a product specialist. So I started there. I had to go to somewhere in Minnesota that next morning. Flew that night, and then I ended up like down in Orlando at the NCBA convention.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, I was 100 degrees in temperature change from Salt Lake City to this Minnesota. And then like it was like minus 20 that day when I got on the plane in Minnesota, and then I end up in Orlando and it's like 87 degrees. So
how do you pack for that? I mean, really?
I got really, really good at packing clothes. And I mean, I've been fortunate to travel a lot. Basically, I kind of started traveling really, really heavy when I was 18, 19, 20 years, probably about after I graduated high school. And, there's times you just don't pack. I mean, you got to buy clothes when you get there. I've got really good at folding jeans and making the best of everything, but it's pretty big, you just kind of got to.
I remember in another
long shot.
In another lifetime, I lived on the beach, and I don't think I owned a pair of socks. And I got this gig up in Chicago around Christmas time, and I flew up there, and I got off the plane, and it had been a long time since I'd been in cold weather.
Yeah, and
I got off the plane, and I wasn't wearing socks. Man, you just think, man, that was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But so okay, so. While you're traveling, you're doing all this traveling, what do? Do you listen to podcasts? You listen to music? You listen to...
Yeah, I don't, I'm not going to lie to you. I listen to podcasts a lot. One thing that, I don't know, I think's kind of went by the wayside, and I like to read. I mean, I'm a old school. I was born in 81. I mean, I grew up, reading the newspaper to find out the news and sorting through all that kind of stuff as a kid. I mean, I can remember whenever I read market reports from the, East St. Louis stockyards, and
right.
And, I always find it interesting to read because I think, to me, when I read articles either in magazines or newspapers or whatever, that's somebody else's artwork, So whenever somebody writes an article about equipment, I want to know that guy's view about, is the equipment too expensive? Are we getting too technical? X, Y, Z. So traveling, when I get on an airplane, honestly, first step is usually I try to go to sleep. And everybody's like, what? I mean, I'll just hunker down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'll sleep. I don't know if it's the inertia from taking off, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I'll do some of them audio books, but I'm always reading. I've always got a magazine with me of some sort, and I'm driving my pickup. When I'm on the road in a pickup, I average right now probably 50 some phone calls a day, and that's not a lot, but that's usually 50 different people you're talking to a day, and anywhere from 30 to 50 text messages mixed in with, a reply to an email. And, you're not supposed to text and drive. So I talk to text a lot, but and just out seeing the countryside, it's kind of like driving down here this morning. I mean, watching the sun come up and, burn the frost off the horizon. The deer were moving, and I saw 5 bald eagles on the way down here this morning. It's a pretty morning,
I'll tell you, I never get tired of that. I guess during the age I don't even know how old are you?
I was born in 81, so I guess you do the math there.
I've got a few years on you.
I don't like to tell anybody a number. I just, everybody says, well, you don't look that old. I said, well,
Well, I'm back I'm a 60s model.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Well, I always say you're just aged. You're seasoned. You're seasoned.
Yeah, it's not the years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I remember as a kid, though, thinking that, man, there was so much publicity about the bald eagles were going extinct.
Yeah.
And now we see them in the fields all the time up here. And I knew it never gets old. I remember there's a field, we'll go up and scout it and we'll map it today. But I remember going through that field and seeing a bald eagle carrying a snake across the field. And I still I had to stop the tractor and just watch.
Yeah, magnificent bird. You know, I couldn't think of a better bird to be the.
I don't know. Benjamin Franklin wanted it to be the turkey.
Yeah.
I think that'd have been a horrible.
You know, when them things are full, you know, come around February when they're full plumage, I mean, they're at a prettier sight, the sun coming up and them eating on a deer carcass or something. But yeah, the same way, John, you know, I grew up right there south of Fairfield, and I remember I was probably 15, 16 years old. One of my dad's friends come by and he's like, man, you been down there on the interstate? You know, we're like, well, what for? And he's like, man, there's an eagle's nest down there. And, you know, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we're right there where the Skillet Fork and the Little Wabash River come together. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it was like, hey, and I mean, now it's nothing.
Right. I mean, if
I seen 5 today.
If I don't see 2 or 3 at least a week, it's surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sort of like you. You know, I grew up. I love to read. Love to read, and as I've, you know, aged, the mileage has gone up on me a little bit. I listen to audiobooks and podcasts a lot. I mean, I'm a huge audiobook. I probably have 1,000 titles in my Audible account.
Yeah.
I listen to so many different varieties, but it's, you know, you get, you know, like a day in the swather. I get 12 hours in the swather, and a lot of times I'll turn my phone off and I just listen to a book all day, and I'm good. I'm good. I can do 120, 160 acres in a day and just cruise.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is when I get in a piece of machinery and get running in a home, you know, I'm zoned in. I just, you know, I sit there and listen for the motor to rev up, and, you know, am I going to load this thing down? Or especially if I'm baling hay, I'm like, well, you know, can I get another half mile there? You know, what can I do today? And like I said, I'd sometimes just a good old day of peace and quiet, not having the phone ringing. It's beautiful.
Oh man, I'll tell you, you know, we used to, back when I worked for a big company, we used to call it the leash, you know, because you had your phone, and back even before then had pagers, and you know, it's rare nowadays. It's rare in today's times to be able to get that peace. You know, there's a lot of times we don't have to see people in person because we do. I mean, how many times do you and I talk on the phone or send texts back and forth? I may go a month or 2 months and not see you, but we still stay in contact. But the downside of that is, you know, that interruption of your time. I mean, I live my life now almost totally to find peace. I don't mind conflict as much. I don't like drama. I don't deal with drama. Stupid conflict just drives me nuts.
That's right. You know,
we've got a real beef. Let's sit down and talk and figure it out. But if you're, you know, mad because your hairdresser messed up, you know, I really don't care.
Yeah. I'm the same way. And that's, you know, I have to, a lot of my friends from back here at home, you know, they don't work in the same role as I work in. You know, one of my best friends from back home, I mean, he's a heavy equipment operator. You know, he's out there on a bulldozer taking his anger out on a pile of dirt, you know, and I'm over here getting a butt chewing from a guy, and it's somewhere because this thing didn't work like it's supposed to. And, you know, I ended up, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, but at the end of the day, I, you know, usually got him fixed over the phone. And it's like, you know, he said, why you park your truck behind your house? I said, I don't want people stopping there. I said, my truck will be in the shed. I said, locked up. My side by side will be kind of hidden. He's like, well, I didn't know you was home. I said, I didn't want you to know I was home, you know? So, it's weird how things change over time. And as you age, just like you said, with the finding peace, and, you know, another thing that a lot of my friends have struggles with, especially when I'm back home, they're like, well, why don't you come over tonight? We're going to cook supper. We're going to do that. Let's go out to eat, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I've been on the road 5 days this week, and I ate out every single meal.
I just want to sit on the couch and eat something.
I'll take a damn boiled hot dog. You know, I'm good, you know? So yeah, it's crazy how things change, but just like you said, with the age, that don't mean nothing.
So how many head of cattle are you running these days?
So yeah, over there in Missouri, in Brock, Meyer, we got around, right now we're at about 420 mama cows. There'll be 250 of them be registered Angus.
Right.
And then, you know, the balance of them cows they would have started out as registered Angus, but they're a female that, you know, I've got a lot of baldies, and we run Brock's really, got his head geared towards the genetic side of it. It works out good, I think, in our level of partnership, is he's always studying studying and breeding and feeding, and I'm always kind of looking at other things like the land management, and running cows here. And I like to just get out and fix fence and be around the cows. So yeah, I'd say we're at 450 pretty easy, and then we'll calve out. Here we just got done fall calving right there at the end of October. We had right at 100.
How long's your window for calving?
We're pushing everything now into a 60-day window, just with it's just a time management deal. I know this year, in a 10-day period there this fall, and that works out good for my work as I kind of schedule stuff around that. But out of those 100, I think we had 86 of them hit the ground in a 10-day window. So there's 25 recip cows over on one pasture. Everything we do it to where we can make it quick work, and we've got a good facility. Calving the heifers, we calved out about 25 heifers here, and we've got a rigged up in a barn. And I mean, basically the protocol is as soon as I see feet, and if it's a heifer, we just go through so much temperature swings during the day, and if I see feet, I'm pulling it out.
Don't even mess with it.
I ain't got time to go in the house, give her 15 minutes. Most of the time, them heifers go to calving. I mean, they'll wear down. They'll just get hot, and then they'll just give up. And then next thing you know, you got a swelled head and a dead calf. And we all know those don't pay the bills.
No. We talked. We got a mutual friend, the Beasleys.
Yeah.
I was talking with Dave the other day, and they like, I think they do like a 60 or 65-day window. Yeah. We're on a 90-day window.
Yeah.
Just because we, natural cover, and we let our bull out, and he's got 90 days. So we put him in on July 4th, pull him out October 4th. And,
Yeah. And that calving window works for commercial guys. The way we're set up over there is, we have a sale in the spring. It's the first Friday night in April. We have our annual sale, and we'll sell several bulls and some females this year. Probably be over 100 head in it this year. And, we've got a pile of customers just like yourself that are traditional, kind of a low management strategy. Hey, it works. The cows bring, we got a 90-day calving window, but they'll come to us. Matter of fact, one of our customers calls quite a bit, and he's like, well, this and that. And I'm like, well, you need to watch so-and-so's calves sell today. And he's like, why is that? And I'm like, you're going to find out. And then he'll call and be like, man, them things were like $2,400 a head. And I'm like, I said, he took 100 head of calves in there, and he had two sorts. I mean, 75 of them went through as two groups. He had a group of 30 big steers, 30 big heifers. And I said, then he had, the rest, kind of what we call the sort offs. And I said, when it comes to dollars and cents, I said, that's what you're after, So getting them into tighter windows and nothing, it's just.
Now, do you AI?
Yeah, everything on the Brock, he's got really strict on this AI protocol, and everything will go through the chute as a heifer. We'll put a seeder in, and then he'll AR one time, and then I've kind of been keeping some records myself, and usually if they stick AI that first time, they're going to have a pretty good reproduction history with us.
Mm-hmm. If
they stick AI that second time, kind of in that second window that they get, and we catch them in heat, the success of them being a highly, boom, 60 days after they calve, post calving, coming in heat, starting to cycle again, usually gets stretched out to 90. And then I'll start to see those cows, what I'd call age out of that calving window. So like right now, I think there's 4 left there's one particularly I don't think's bred, but there's 3 cows that are what I'd consider a late calver. They're going to calve after the 1st of November, and they probably need to be sold as just a commercial to somebody.
I think it's interesting, the data side of cattle, helps make those decisions. I mean, back 20 years ago, the cattle guys would be walking out and go, that one's not going to be good. We're going to get rid of that one. We're going to get rid of that one. Now you look on you look on your spreadsheet or whatever cattle application you use.
Yeah.
And you're saying, what, this one has, she's just about calved out. She's not producing. She's late every time. She's going to go. And you can make that decision based on a dollars and cents type of approach.
Yeah.
And that's not just for the big guys. I mean, the small cattle guys can, can store that data and be able to call that up at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a valid point. And as I see the transition, we don't have many producers in the world, or I shouldn't say the world, but North America that run between 20 and 100 cows. We got a lot. I mean, in Missouri, our average cow herd size is like 46 head for the state, but that don't include the guys in North Missouri that run 1,000. I've got customers in our AOR that run 1,000, 1,200 mama cows. I mean, we're full-time ranching, and you get to different areas, such as this area here where you got 12, 15 cows running on 40 acres. And, at the end of the day, it's still got to bring a little money. And those people are still, they're utilizing that data. Hey, I want a bull that, it's going to convert some energy to, 3 pounds of gain. A good friend of mine lives over here towards Chester and Pinckneyville and out at DuQuoin area. I mean, he runs quite a few cows too, and I've known him my whole life. And, we're always talking about conversion. And one thing that I always say is, in Missouri, we rely on grass. Our cattle, we got a lot of grass. We got good grass in Missouri. That's one thing I noticed when I moved over there in 2016 was, man, just the grass is just phenomenal. And I'm doing some research, and I always say, well, to have good grass, you got to have a little rock. Well, there's some places we got a lot of rock, but because we're right there on the foothills of Mississippi. But when corn is readily available, such as in Illinois and Iowa and Indiana, I mean that's a whole different level of protein, and you can do about anything you want to with a bucket of corn. When the corn ain't readily available, you got to figure out how to make them things convert. So
and
the dollar comes with it.
Like now, the corn prices are down so low. A lot of guys are feeding corn because it's so cheap comparatively.
Yeah.
For energy gain when you look at it on a per ton. So
yeah.
I know on our end, we're looking back at, for a while we were in the direct to consumer beef, and we did that for a few years. We're pretty successful at it. My dad passed away, and so we sort of got out of it. But I think with some of the new regulations that I think are on the horizon, I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for the small producers, especially.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct there, John. And I look at that long term on down the road in the next 5 to 6 years. One of the meetings I had with John Deere this year on some stuff is like, I mean, the producers are differentiating. I mean, the guys that are running 25 cows, and I'm not going to lie, I mean, marketing has just went through the roof in the last 20 years. I mean, and people have learned how to market stuff. And I mean, I know people that are, for instance, a customer that buys some bred heifers off of me up in central Illinois. I mean, his boy's like 8th grade, and he's selling like 18 butcher beef a year, and he's not even promoting it. It's just from within, kind of like school teachers and in word of mouth. And, those guys finish cattle. They got a lot of corn, but like I said, that small guy, I mean, the sky's the limit on how big you want to be. And I know one of another good friend, they got into they had their own label for beef back in 17, 16, 15, 16, somewhere in there. And, at that time, people weren't buying based on food security. Everybody buys now on food security.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, everybody says it's COVID, but it wasn't COVID. I mean, it's just a transition in how people eat and how people purchase.
We did this back in 15, 16. And, at that point, it was the high end stuff was what we sold a whole lot of. We were selling fillets, which shipping them to California.
Yeah.
We were shipping individual cuts all over the place. Now it's about, the marketing I see is about making sure that you build a relationship with your neighbors and that your local community, because trucking, shipping, all of that comes into play. And then you put the biosecurity. You want to have food security, know where that cow came from.
Yeah.
You want that type of a relationship. It's really opening the doors to the small producers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
And especially in rural America, just like last week, I said I was in New York, and that niche market. And, obviously, I mean, the world's getting bigger. We're getting more people to feed. We got to have more groceries. And, those people are buying based off of what they feel that the purchasing point has no problem of price when it comes down to knowing they've got the quality.
Well, and I think you look at some other things like one of the big retailers, I think it's Walmart, has their own feedlots now that they're feeding out Holstein steers. And that when you go to the grocery store and when you go to them and you're buying that $4 beef, that $4 hamburger, it's an old Holstein that they fed out.
Yeah.
And I think it on the consumer side, I saw a guy the other day. I mean, I don't do the grocery shopping, so I can't really say, but I think a dozen eggs is what, $5-6 at the grocery store now.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but yeah, they ain't cheap.
And somebody was complaining. My neighbor here has a bunch of chickens, and he sells his eggs for $2 a dozen, and people were complaining about the price. I was like, you know what? Go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Instead, go buy this. These are naturally raised. You know where the eggs come from. They're not a commercial factory.
Yeah.
And I think the small producer, and I talk a lot about the small producer because I think with my background in marketing, I like to help the small producer learn to market themselves a little better. And I think this is a real opportunity, some real opportunities coming up. There's some scary things, that could happen too with the GMOs and the pesticide and the herbicide restrictions that may come. So I think those are some things to watch. So let's talk. Here's a question that I talk a lot about technology because I'm a dork, but on the Forage side, the whole reason you're down here today is we are making a major upgrade in our process. I was writing my own databases to track stuff, but John Deere has released their what's called Bale Dock.
A Bale Dock, just 23 model. Yeah, it's really hit the ground running here in 24.
Yeah, and so we're jumping on board with that. We switched out our balers, and I've talked about the pain of that, and you guys talked me into the green one, and so and I've said this before, I did not buy the green one based on the technology. I didn't buy it based. I bought it on dealer service.
Yeah.
I mean, and most guys in today's market are completely buying on dealer service.
Absolutely.
I mean, people ask what truck I drive it. I drive the truck that I can get serviced. If I can't get it serviced, I'm not driving it.
That's a very valid point. And just, you can buy any color you want. We've got the internet now. You can buy it wherever you want. You can buy it in Europe.
Yeah.
They're going to come over here and work. They're going to keep going. And that's one thing in this business that I take a lot of pride in, is keeping my guys going. And yeah, I get a little aggravated. I always say my phone on 24/7. Don't mean I got to answer,
But you've always taken. I mean, you guys have always taken care of me. I mean, when I first came out here, this is long before Sydenstricker Nobbe. Before they bought the dealership, it was a different company, same location, but I didn't get great service, and I didn't buy Deere for a long time.
Yeah,
and it was based on service.
Yep.
Now that we've gotten into it and Sydenstricker Nobbe, we've had a really good relationship with you. I won't say it's perfect.
Oh, nothing's perfect.
I've never had a relationship with a dealership on anything that's perfect.
Yeah.
But there has to be give and take. And, we made this switch. And one of the things I am most excited about is the technology side. I mean, talk to me about, how, in compared to the rest of the country, I'm a small operator.
Oh no, you're pretty good size.
Well, I'm a pretty small operator when you talk about acreage and you talk about that stuff, but we're going to be able to use this, use this Bale Dock, and it's really going to help us.
Yeah. So that's one thing that, in the past in the forage and hay business is, it's always kind of took the back seat to a lot of people. And I guess probably from a young age, I always kind of knew that you was going to have hay. And of course, like I said, any room that, whether it be a sheep or cow or horse or whatever, I mean, they got to have dry matter to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they don't have dry matter, they ain't going to survive. And so Deere really kind of charged into this deal probably 5-6 years ago. And, we seen, they seen the yield maps and stuff just similar to a corn farmer. So now, like I said, with the technology and the stuff hitting the forage and, hay and forage side with the windrowers such as yourself, just like I spoke earlier, we're starting to put on more fertilizer. We're looking at variable rate fertilizer. We're looking at variable rate spraying. We're spraying for bugs. We're spraying for, fungus and this and that. So, as a cost operation, and everything costs money, but in the long run, it actually saves you money if we've got this stuff documented. And that's a tough pill for a lot of guys. Oh, it ain't gonna save me money. I've always just put up that field made 4 bales of the acre. Well, did you weigh them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people ask, well, how much do those bales weigh? And I can tell you.
Yeah.
I can tell you. I mean, I can tell you our round bales are weighing 1,000. On different fields with the densities, there may be 1,200.
Yeah.
Our square bales, we're shooting for an 800 pound bale average in the field, and I can make. Even in the database I wrote for our operation, I would say, okay, these bales are averaging 800. How many tons did we get? I think with this new system, not only do I not have to remember to put it in the database so I can make those decisions, but it goes there automatically.
Yeah.
And then being able to make those decisions at the beginning of the year, looking at, okay, and mid-year changes, but at the beginning of the year, we're looking at, okay, this is what our plan is going in. We looked at what happened last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can make real decisions with real data, not just guesses.
Yeah.
And going forward, I mean, I think for small operators I think this is an important, this is an important step. And as deer gets into it, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but even the round baler, because we don't track a lot of data with our round baler, because for us in our operation, round bales are a secondary thought.
Absolutely.
I mean, if a field gets foxtail in it or gets something like that our horse customers is not good for them, we round bale it.
Yeah.
If it gets, but we don't track that.
Yeah.
It would be, that's one of the things we're going to be looking at coming down the road is go ahead and tracking that data with the round bales, because we still need the yield data for the field.
Absolutely.
We've just made a plan right now where we're going to start, every field that we have is going to get soil sampled this year.
Oh yeah.
So that we have some better, like in the past years, we would only do certain fields where we saw trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're every field.
Yep.
So
that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, similar to hay sample, they don't want to sample a bad bale.
That's right.
They always want to sample a good spot in the field, because then they don't have to put as much lime on it, and in your world, we've got a lot of alfalfa, you got that pH level is so critical anymore on this alfalfa. And I tell guys, the pH level is what rolls into the plant survival and the hardiness, but that also affects, the chemistry of how your chemical works when you do spread.
That's right. It also affects weed pressure.
I mean, the list goes on, but yeah, to go back to the, what we're going to do today is we're going to map your fields, and then, like I said, we're going to enter all that into the John Deere Operations Center. So then you basically can know how many passes, if you've got a XYZ window of opportunity that you need to, hey, I think we can put up 40 acres, or, I've got a guy that just, this year he's like, man, I never thought about it doing that away. And, first cutting, he goes out, and I'm sure you'll probably, convert to this over time, but he goes and cuts all these headlands first.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes and bales all these headlands first.
Really?
Out of about 3 different fields.
Huh.
But he said,
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, see, so I'm saying, thinking outside the box, but he goes in and, out of those headland passes, with your windrow, or, your 16-foot cut, you make 4 passes around that outside of the field. Yeah, it's here, here, here. And, usually what do we have, in this area? Obviously we've got a lot of deer pressure on our headland rows, and the yield's usually a little bit weaker on that point of the field. And his philosophy is he goes out and cuts them because he gets them out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, you run a big square baler, a large square baler, and you dump a bale. I mean, you don't have any control of where them things come off, as that's the original nonstop balers, I tell everybody. And you don't have any control. Well, he goes out there, it's always like, well, I'm going to do the end rows and I'm going to start here. Well, then, if the weather's right, and that's part of, what we're doing today is you can pull up 3 fields and say, well, I think I got a weather window to do this many acres. I need to go in here and do this. And then, yeah, boom, you can go back in there 3 days later and you can do the middle of the field, or you can do 12 acres out of this 80 or whatever. So yeah, technology isn't going away. I will say that. And we're charging on pretty hard in the, forage and livestock side here with what I do in my role. And like I said, a lot of guys didn't ever think about it, but once they do, they're like, well, yeah, I can see where I can utilize this on several different things. Harrow and pasture.
I'll tell you, the technology we use, and like I said, we're not a big operation, but we use a lot of technology. I mean, I contract with a company called BAM Weather. You ever hear of those guys?
Oh yeah.
Man, they're awesome. They are absolutely awesome. And they're one of those guys I love. They under promise and over deliver. I mean, when we, somebody says, well, you pay X number of dollars a year for that. I was like, you know what?
It's worth it.
First time we ever got them, we had, you look at your typical, you watch your TV weather and you have all of your apps. Well, those apps just pick they pick a weather model, and that's your forecast for the day.
Yeah.
And, I got on phone or got on a text chat with these guys and said, hey, I'm seeing something that's a little scary here, some pop-up showers heading up a little north of us. And they looked at it and said, you've got about 3 hours. And as soon as I got off the text with them, I'm calling everybody saying, okay, turn the baler off, get everybody jumping a loader.
Yeah.
We saved 250 bales. That's, $25,000 that we got in a barn that was completely, perfect hay, that we would never have, it'd have been rained on.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say ruined, but the marketability would have been decreased about.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the technology side of it, allowing us to not only make in-season decisions.
Yeah.
The more information we can get to be able to make decisions faster, earlier.
Yeah.
Is better. Mow better.
Yeah. That's the way agriculture is right now. We're just, we aren't doing anything different than we did 25, 30 years ago. We're just doing it better with the resources we have. And, just like you're saying, the data and technology, and weather's the main thing. Weather's the number one thing in agriculture right now, and then labor's the second. So,
well, I'll tell you, I used to work in the television business, and work with a lot of meteorologists, and I was like, you know what? I don't know how the heck you have a job where you get it wrong more than 50% of the time, and you still have a job. If I did that, I'd be fired. And,
yeah.
But even those guys have gotten a lot better over time. And like I said, we contract with that company, BAM. They're fantastic. They do a really good job for us. But those decisions, anything you can use to make better decisions. My kids would ask me, Dad, how do you make decisions like this? And, it's the same answer every time. It's you take all the information you have, you ask the people who you think are a lot smarter than you in it, you take all the information you have, and then you make a decision, you move forward. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, but you learn something either way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your input there, because that's kind of how me and Brock operate over there. When we go to cutting hay, it's like, well, we'll say, darn if you do, darn if you don't. And I'm like, well, it ain't going to get baled if it's standing up.
That's right.
And, we run a pretty heavy fleet of equipment, and we do a lot of hay ourselves for cattle operation and bedding. And that's one thing that I can manage it once I get it cut. If I ain't got it cut and it just keeps getting rained on, we can get into a pinch where we've got a really bad situation. And I've seen some bad situations unfold with producers that, there's days that the baler don't need to be running at 5 o'clock.
That's right.
The moisture's coming up from the ground. That baler really needs to be running at 10. And, that's one thing that Brock and I we'll text back and forth, and I'll be like, hey man, I think we need to roll with it. Let's get going at 9:30 this morning. There could be a shower coming in here this afternoon. We don't know, X, Y, Z. And, that's one thing same as you and your operations. You can't go, you've got how many acres of hay? 800?
Something like that.
Okay. You go out, with your labor and your fleet of equipment, you can't go out and do the first cutting all in 1 week.
No.
It just don't work.
No.
You'd have the biggest mess you'd ever seen in your life.
We tried this past year, to do as an experiment. I say it was an experiment. I got a little aggressive.
Yeah.
And I mowed down 300 because in Southern Illinois, those weather conditions, we mow one day, it sits a day, sits another day, and then we rake and bale the fourth day. So when we saw those were the weather conditions coming, we jumped in. I said, okay, I'm going to mow 100 acres a day. We're going to put 350 acres on the ground. And then what a mess.
Yeah.
My guys were revolting. Heck, I was about ready to quit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We couldn't, and we ran into the logistical problem of, with the big squares, you have to get them off the field that day. You just can't let them sit.
The risk is too much.
And getting them loaded on trailers, hauled to the barns, loaded in the barn, stacked, sorted so that, I try to mow everything on our operation. I try to mow every blade of grass on the farm, because that's where I'm making the first judgment of who's the customer for this. Hey, is it high enough quality? Does it look good? Is it, going to be retail? And then, you get into the raking and baling and all of the further steps. But, what a mistake. I mean, we got it all baled, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Managing that process is tough.
Yeah,
So.
it's a challenge, and I feel the same way. I'll be mowing hay one morning, and I'll be like, well, what if I go put down another 15 acres, and I'm like, then the next thing I know, we're sitting there 7 days later, and that 15 acres is just kind of like, uh-oh. And, but, it's all got to get done, which we're not near, the alfalfa size that you are. We got a lot of grass hay, and we grow a lot of brome over there too.
But you still have the logistic of knocking it down. You still got to be mowed, raked, baled, hauled, stored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing that, I like the way you said that there. I really admire that. Is I do that myself, as I always think from the end to the beginning, when I'm out there scouting fields, and I'm like, man, this is a good field of brome hay. This, we want to do this right. I want this to be my wean calf feed, or this is going to be the feed. This is going to be the hay that we feed, wet cows that are spring calvers, when they're heavy in calf, they got a 60-day-old calf nursing their side and the nutrition.
Yep.
I want to be feeding the best that they can get, and that makes a big difference too on our cutting window. And that's kind of how we've got it all planned out logistically, as well as, we start out with our top quality and work our way to the basement. Yeah, I mean, usually when we get done with the CRP, we've got bedding, so.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I mean, I'm looking at, as, in the horse market, when you get alfalfa that's too hot, when you get up there in that 189 RFE, 190 plus, I mean, there are some people that want that, and there are some definitely some needs for that. But most horse owners, that's far too hot for them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's too high proteins, too high so you really want them to have 150, 160, in that
That's a
middle,
pretty good medium,
that middle area. And so we have a large dairy goat. There's a lot of dairy goats in this area.
Yeah.
And this year, because of the way, we had all the extra rain early in the season and the drought in the late season, I didn't bale one bale that I thought was good enough quality for them. And I think, one of the things that I've always liked when I've talked to you give me the real deal, and I'm able to make decisions because I trust the information you're giving me. You're not, it's not always a sales job.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And, I got a call from them, couple of those dairies the other day, and said, well, we haven't heard from you this year. Do you have hay for us? And I said, no, that's why I didn't call you. I don't think I had anything that I baled, but I don't think I had enough of what I baled that was high enough quality for you. So I'm not going to bother you with it. I'm always trying, but they are, for us, that's a secondary or tertiary market. So, if I get something other, I'm baling for the horse people. I want the horse people. We had Dr. Travis Bees. I don't know, you know Travis?
I know the name down in this area.
Yeah, he's fantastic. His dad was fantastic, and he's really come on. He's a great guy. And we were talking about how, you were talking about how if it's a ruminant, it needs dry matter. Well, if it's a horse, a lot of people are going to pellets.
Yeah.
And from a nutrition standpoint, that's fine. But when you look at the overall health of the animal, they still need hay in their gut.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're going to be active with them. Like we have a barn full of rope horses.
Yeah.
And, when they start to run, he described it as, you've got to have that forage in their stomach. That's what stops the acid from splashing up on the sidewalls, where it's not lined for dealing with that acid. And so, there's that balance, because we're looking at things like pelletization or cubing or something like that. But you have to have that forage, because those horses are designed, God designed them to eat forage. And that's what stops the splashing of the acid. So when they go to run, or you put them in strenuous activities, that you will save your horses, you will save a ton in medical bills by buying high quality hay.
Yeah.
So that decision to, move in those other directions is one that's tough because we have to base it on, we want to take the best care of our customers as we can. So do you move all that way or do you move partially that way? What do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question too. And like I said, I feel that there's a lot of education that could go on with a lot of things in this world,
Well,
one of them would be animal owners,
yeah, I think that's a place that one of the reasons I accepted the role and was pleased to accept the role in the board of directors of the IFGC is, that education portion.
Yeah.
Being able to educate people about the forage and not only the land stewardship and the nutritional side, but also the other health reasons why forage production. If you look at the pyramid of, and me, I'm sort of in the equine market, but we feed a lot of cattle as well.
Yeah.
But when you look at forage production and a pyramid of producing beef or producing forage is sort of the bottom of the pyramid. Without that, it doesn't work.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a very valid point. We got to have grass, and my experience working with I'll say this right now that we can try, but the people in the dairy business, I mean, they are the experts of grass and forage. I mean, my work in Minnesota and Wisconsin over the years in my past, and I've been fortunate enough to go across the pond over to Holland and Germany and spend some time over there. And I always say they farm by the inch and we farm by the acre over here in North America. And they'll kind of tell you that, when I worked for that company out of Germany, I mean, they don't grow alfalfa over there, and, so their machinery was coming in here and we got a different expectation and of what we want the crop to look like coming through the machine. But yeah, back to what I'd call the concrete, the solid foundation that we got to build off of is the forage and the forage production, because just like you said with the horse business, I mean, I don't know how many people buy their kid a horse and then they're like, man, this thing cost me money. I got to buy hay. Well, and I got a really, really good friend. He's a good friend of yours too, up here at Noble. I mean, and Phil's top. I mean, he's top notch. Hey, man, he's a businessman. Phil knows his business, and him and his boy Scotty, been friends with them ever since they bought my buddy's equipment, and people send me Facebook messages. Hey, we know you're involved in the hay business, in the equipment. Where do we buy? I'm looking for some hay, and I'm like, well, I always want to say, well, when you go to the grocery store, do you buy the lettuce that's brown and shitty?
That's right.
Or do you buy the good looking green stuff up front? And if you want to buy just what I call, it's both lettuce, it's two different prices.
Yeah.
But
well,
that education of that, the quality beyond of the price. And, I know of 2 or 3 people are like, man, we can't believe the condition of our horses. And I'm like, well, they go from eating 4% crude protein to eating 9.
That's right. I've got a friend of mine that he doesn't buy any bagged feed at all. He feeds a high cut. In fact, he buys all of his hay the vast majority of his hay from us. And then he's got a special, he puts his own diet together. Yeah. And every horse in his barn is just bloomed out and looks show ready.
Yeah.
And it's, nutrition that if you spend, say, 12 cents a pound on hay and you're buying high quality stuff, and then you compare that to going out and buying the CRP, the CRP hay that you can buy for 5 cents a pound, it's night and day difference. It's, it's the McDonald's French fry versus going to, Peter Luger's in New York.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the same way that Brock and I, like I said, we do quite a bit of wet feed, do a lot of wet rye, and that's usually our first good. We're mad at each other that first week because we got everything in the world going on, and I'll be out scouting on a Friday and I'll say, man, we got flag leaf, looks like we got a window, and that protein level and that wet feed is so critical to us, because the way we feed it, I mean, I got to have protein for those cows, those pairs. So I can always find dry matter.
Yeah.
But I got to have, my wet side and, dry matter intake, and balance the ration to make it as cheap and affordable for us as we can.
That's right.
Is a big deal. And, within 5 days, that number can go from, I've put some up in the high 10s, like a 10.8 on the protein. And then, the next time we got into it, we were back down to a 4.
Yeah, and what a difference
I'm here to tell you, we can buy straw. It's 4, So and then we also have to look at, you know, the cost of the bale too, you know, as we, you know, put less, you know, 50% product into a bale, you know, we get down to 40%, we're putting more material in the bale that's not going to ensile and make our feed as good as it needs to be. So yeah, there's a lot of education out there, and just, you know, that's, like I said, I find myself reading a lot. I like to educate myself off of what, you know, what John does and what Phil does and what's, you know, I'll pull in there like last week. I'll talk to the Amish, you know.
Yep.
I mean, I don't have no problem with it, you know.
Well, Billy Bob, we could talk for hours.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think the world of you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to spend the morning with us. So anyway, with that said, I'll let you all go. You have a good day. Good luck. God bless.